My hand freezes on the smooth foil of the small, square packet tucked into the zippered pocket of his suitcase. Behind me, I hear his footsteps on the stairs, whistling a cheerful tune. I quickly shove the condom back where I found it and zip the bag shut, my heart hammering against my ribs. I will find out the truth before he leaves tonight. Subscribe now because trust like this doesn't shatter every day. The bedroom smelled of David's familiar soap, that clean, citrusy scent he'd used for years, and the faint, dusty odor of the suitcase pulled from the top of the closet. Afternoon sunlight fell across the bed in warm rectangles, illuminating the organized chaos of a man packing for a 3-day trip. Maya moved on autopilot, folding a soft gray sweater, her mind already on the school run she had to do in an hour. Chloe needed to be picked up at 3, then piano lessons at 4, then dinner to make, homework to supervise. The usual. David was in the shower. The sound of water was a steady, white noise hum through the bathroom door. Their life was a series of these mundane, comforting routines. 12 years of marriage, 8 years of parenthood, a house with a mortgage, a dog who shed on the couch, a daughter who was finally old enough to sleep through the night. This was the life they'd built together, brick by brick. Maya smiled to herself as she folded his favorite blue button-down. She reached for the pile of items on his dresser, his toiletry bag, a leather-bound notebook, a new paperback thriller. As she leaned over the suitcase to tuck his phone charger into the side pocket, her hand brushed against something small and flat, hidden deep within the zippered compartment. She frowned, unzipped the pocket fully, and reached inside. Her fingers closed around a foil square. For a full 10 seconds, she just stared at it. A 3-pack of condoms. One missing. The foil was cool and smooth against her fingertips, impossibly light, yet it felt like a stone. Condoms. They hadn't used condoms since before Chloe was conceived, over 8 years ago. After Chloe, they'd had conversations about more children, maybe one more, they'd said, but it never happened, and eventually they stopped talking about it. They relied on her IUD. That was their reality. So why were these here? Maya's stomach dropped as if she'd stepped into an elevator shaft. The room seemed to tilt. Behind her, the shower cut off. Panic, cold and sharp, lanced through her chest. She shoved the pack back into the pocket, re-zipped it with shaking fingers, and stood up straight, gripping the edge of the dresser for support. The warm, familiar bedroom suddenly felt like a stranger's house. The sunlight seemed harsh, accusing. The sound of David humming in the bathroom, that cheerful tune he always hummed, made her skin prickle. She heard the bathroom door open, his footsteps on the carpet. Any second now he'd walk out, towel around his waist, hair damp, that easy smile on his face. And she would have to look at him and pretend she hadn't found anything. She would have to smile back. She drew a shaky breath and smoothed her sweater with trembling hands. I will find out the truth before he leaves tonight, she thought. I have to. David emerged from the bathroom wrapped in a towel, his hair damp and tousled, his face relaxed and open. He smiled at her, that easy, loving smile she'd trusted for 12 years, the smile that had made her fall in love with him back in college. Almost done, my love? He asked, crossing to the dresser where his clothes were laid out. Maya forced her lips into a matching smile. The muscles in her face felt stiff, foreign. Just about, she heard herself say, her voice sounding thin and distant, like it belonged to someone else. Did you need anything else? Socks, extra charger. He shook his head, pulling on a fresh t-shirt. Nope, got everything I need. He glanced at the suitcase neatly packed. You're the best packer. You know that. I just shove it all in a ball and call it done. He crossed to her and kissed her forehead, his lips warm against her skin. What would I do without you? The question hit her like a punch to the stomach. What would he do without her? She watched him move around the room, gathering his watch, his wallet, his phone. She searched his face for something. Guilt, tension, a flicker of something hidden. There was nothing. Just cheerful anticipation for his trip. The same easy demeanor he always had before a business trip. A surge of hope, hot and desperate, flooded through her chest. There had to be an explanation. Maybe the condoms were old from years ago, and he'd just never cleaned out that pocket. He traveled so much, used that suitcase constantly. Things accumulated. Or maybe a colleague had played a stupid joke, slipped them in his bag as a prank. Yes, that was it, a prank. His coworkers were always joking around. And I saw something in your bag. His voice was a little stronger now. I was putting your charger away and I saw something in your bag. His back was to her as he fastened his watch. Oh yeah, what's that? His tone was perfectly casual, perfectly unconcerned. A pack of condoms, she said. The words felt like stones in her mouth, heavy and rough. He turned then, his eyebrows rising in mild confusion. Then he chuckled. What? No way. Let me see. He walked to the suitcase, unzipped the pocket with practiced ease, and pulled out the small foil pack. He looked at them, then at her, and laughed. A full, genuine laugh. Oh my God, these must be ancient. From that work conference in Vegas, like 5 years ago. Remember that one? I just never cleaned this pocket out. The things you find, right? He tossed them in the trash can by the desk with a casual flick. Problem solved. Ancient history. He pulled her into a hug, his body warm and solid against hers. Maya melted into him, the relief so potent it made her dizzy. Of course, it was nothing. She was being paranoid, letting her imagination run wild. 5 years of marriage had taught her to trust him. 12 years. She was being ridiculous. I love you, she murmured into his chest. Love you too, he said, kissing the top of her head. Now help me find my good tie, the blue one with the stripes. She stepped back smiling, a real smile this time, and went to the closet. The relief was so overwhelming it almost brought tears to her eyes. She was so lucky, so foolish to doubt him. She found the tie and handed it to him, and he kissed her again. And for a moment, everything was right in her world. She drove him to the airport with Chloe chattering in the back seat about her school project, a diorama of the solar system, complete with painted foam planets and glitter for stars. Maya nodded and made appropriate sounds of interest, but her mind kept drifting back to that moment in the bedroom. The foil packet in her hand, the spike of terror, the glorious relief. She felt like she'd been given a second chance, a reminder not to take things for granted. At the departure's drop-off, David leaned in from the passenger seat and kissed her properly, then twisted around to blow a kiss to Chloe. Be good for Mommy, he said. I'll bring you both back something nice. Promise, Chloe asked him. Promise. He winked, grabbed his roller suitcase from the trunk, and disappeared through the sliding glass doors with a wave. Maya watched him go, the last vestiges of her earlier panic fading into the joy of her daughter's laughter. Driving home, she felt a profound sense of foolishness. She'd almost ruined everything over an old pack of condoms. She thought about all the marriages that crumbled because of suspicion, because of unfounded jealousy. She wouldn't be one of those wives. She trusted her husband. That was the foundation of everything. Back home, she put a load of laundry in while Chloe worked on her diorama at the kitchen table. The house felt peaceful, normal. Maya hummed as she sorted through the hamper. David's jeans from yesterday, Chloe's school uniform, her own sweater. As she lifted David's jeans, something crinkled in the pocket. She reached in automatically and pulled out a receipt. It was from a pharmacy across town. Not their usual one, but one near his office. The date was 3 days ago. The total was $11.47. Maya stared at the receipt. She knew that price. She'd bought them herself, years ago before they were married. It was the exact cost of a 3-pack of condoms. The world tilted on its axis again. The relief of the morning curdled into a thick, nauseating dread. She gripped the edge of the washing machine, her knuckles white. 3 days ago. He bought them 3 days ago. Not 5 years ago. 3 days ago. And one was already missing. Her phone buzzed on the counter, a text from David. On the plane, my 2 favorite girls. She stared at the heart emoji, then at the receipt in her hand. The explanation he'd given her was a lie. A practiced, easy lie, delivered with a chuckle and a hug. He'd looked her in the eyes and lied without a flicker of hesitation. He had bought these condoms 3 days ago, and one was already gone. She wasn't foolish for being suspicious. She was foolish for believing him, for wanting so desperately to believe him that she'd grabbed onto his flimsy explanation like a drowning woman. Chloe called from the kitchen. Mommy, can we have snacks? Maya stuffed the receipt into her pocket. Coming, sweetheart. Her voice sounded normal. How did her voice sound normal? She walked into the kitchen and got out the goldfish crackers and apple slices, moving like an automaton, her mind screaming in a language she couldn't articulate. That night, after Chloe was in bed, she sat alone in the dark living room and let herself cry for the first time. Silent tears so Chloe wouldn't hear. She cried for the lie, for the betrayal, for the 12 years that suddenly felt like a costume she'd been wearing. And she cried for herself, for the woman who had believed, who had trusted, who had melted into his hug with such relief. The receipt sat on the coffee table in front of her, a small piece of paper that had just destroyed her world. The house felt cavernous and cold after she put Chloe to bed. Maya sat at the kitchen table, the receipt smoothed out before her like a piece of criminal evidence. She'd stared at it so long she had it memorized. The pharmacy name, the date, the time, 6:47 p.m., the items she could guess, the total, $11.47, the price of a lie. She had called his hotel. The front desk confirmed a reservation for David Morrison, check-in completed. That was a small relief, a tiny anchor in the storm. He was where he said he'd be. But that didn't explain the receipt. It didn't explain the missing condom. It didn't explain the woman's laugh she hadn't heard yet but somehow knew was coming. Her mind, once a refuge of happy memories, was now a torture chamber. It replayed every late night at the office, every vague explanation about client dinners, every time he'd been too tired for intimacy, every time he'd looked at his phone with that private smile. She saw his charming smile in a new, horrifying light. It wasn't love, it was a cover, a performance. She'd been married to an actor for 12 years and never knew she was in the audience. She called her sister, Sarah. It was late, but Sarah picked up on the second ring. She always did. Maya, what's wrong? Maya tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Then the sobs came, ugly, heaving sobs that she'd been holding in for hours. Through choked-back tears, she told her everything. The suitcase, the condoms, his easy lie, the receipt. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was firm, steady, the voice of someone who'd been through her own marriage wreck and survived. He's lying, Maya. You know he's lying. The question is, what are you going to do? What can I do? Maya whispered. I have no proof of an affair, just a receipt and a pack of condoms he already threw away. He took them with him, Sarah. The empty pack is in his suitcase right now, probably. Then you wait, Sarah said. You watch, you pay attention, and you protect yourself. Don't confront him yet. Not until you have more. More evidence, more pain, more sleepless nights wondering who he was with, what she looked like, whether she was younger, prettier, funnier, whether he laughed with her the way he used to laugh with Maya. After she hung up, Maya sat in the dark living room, hugging a pillow to her chest. The thought that he might be with someone else right now, in some hotel room, doing the things they used to do while she sat here drowning in doubt. It was a physical pain in her chest, sharp and hot. She thought about calling him, just to hear his voice, to see if she could detect something in his tone. But what would that accomplish? He'd lie. He was good at lying. She looked at her daughter's drawing on the refrigerator, held there by a magnetic butterfly, a crude family portrait, the three of them holding hands under a yellow sun with rays. Maya, David, Chloe, Mommy, Daddy, me. The lie of it broke her heart all over again. Despair, heavy and black, settled over her like a blanket. She was trapped in a nightmare, married to a stranger with no clear way out. And the worst part was, part of her still loved him, still wanted there to be an explanation, still hoped. That was the cruelest part of all. He was due back in 2 days. Maya couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. She functioned on autopilot, a ghost in her own home. She made Chloe's lunches, drove her to school, helped with homework, smiled at piano recitals. On the outside, she was the same Maya. On the inside, she was a wasteland. She stopped answering David's calls, letting them go to voicemail. She couldn't hear his voice without wanting to scream, without wanting to ask him questions she wasn't ready to ask. He left cheerful messages. Just checking in, hope you're both okay, miss you, Talk soon. And each one felt like a knife. On the second night, after a particularly long message where he'd described a great steak at a client dinner and promised to bring home the leftovers, she sat in the dark living room and finally allowed herself to see everything clearly. Not through the fog of hope or denial, but clearly. The late nights at the office, the new cologne she never bought him, the sudden fastidiousness about his appearance before trips, the way he'd sometimes look at his phone and smile, then quickly look away, the way he'd stopped reaching for her in bed, the way he'd started calling her babe instead of my love. A small thing, but it had bothered her, and she'd never said anything. The evidence had been piling up for months. She just hadn't wanted to see it. Her phone buzzed. A new voicemail. From him. Probably another cheerful check-in. She almost deleted it without listening. What was the point? But something made her press play. His voice filled the silent room, but it was different. Low. Urgent. A whisper. Hey, it's me. Listen, I'm going to be late tomorrow. Maybe a few hours. Something came up with a potential new client. Dinner ran long, and then we're doing drinks. Don't wait up. I'll grab a cab from the airport. Love you. That was it. He'd hung up. She replayed it, her finger trembling on the screen. And in the background of his whispered message, she heard it. A muffled sound. A woman's soft laugh, quickly cut off, and as if someone had realized they were being recorded and covered their mouth. Maya's blood turned to ice. She played it again, and again, and again. Each time the laugh was there, brief, muffled, but unmistakable. The enlightenment was not a single flash of light, but a slow, horrifying dawn. It was real, all of it. The proof wasn't a receipt or a foil packet. It was another woman's laugh, caught in the static of a late-night voicemail, leaking through while her husband whispered lies to his wife. A new, icy-cold determination settled in her bones, replacing the despair. The tears stopped. The shaking stopped. She sat very still in the dark, the phone in her hand, and thought. He was coming home tomorrow. He would walk through that door with his suitcase and his smile and his lies, and she would be ready. The next move was hers. The front door opened at 2 in the afternoon. David walked in, pulling his roller suitcase behind him, his face breaking into that familiar, tired smile. The smile of a man coming home after a long trip, glad to be back with his family. Honey, I'm home, he called out. You wouldn't believe the flight. Delayed twice, and then the traffic from the airport was... He stopped. Maya was sitting on the bottom step of the stairs, holding a mug of cold coffee in both hands. She hadn't touched it in hours. She didn't smile. She just watched him. The suitcase stood between them, a dormant monster. Maya, you okay? His voice was laced with convincing concern, the same concern he'd probably used on other women. You look pale. Are you sick? She stood up slowly, her movements calm and deliberate. She walked past him without a word and knelt by the suitcase. She laid it flat on the floor, unzipped it, and flipped it open. His dirty clothes, his leather notebook, his phone charger, a crumpled receipt from a restaurant she didn't recognize. She ignored it all. She reached for the small zippered pocket, the same pocket where she'd found the condoms 3 days ago. Her hand was steady, no trembling now. She unzipped it, reached inside, and pulled out a single-use condom wrapper. She held it up between her thumb and forefinger, letting the afternoon light glint off the torn foil. It was so small, so light, so devastating. She looked from the wrapper to his face. He was pale now, the smile was gone. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. For once in his life, the charming performer had no lines. Maya didn't say a word. She didn't have to. The condom wrapper in her hand said everything. The receipt in her pocket said everything. The voicemail on her phone with that woman's laugh said everything. She looked at him, the stranger she'd been married to for 12 years, and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a vast, empty calm. She turned and walked towards the kitchen, leaving him standing there with his suitcase, the evidence, and the shattered pieces of their life at his feet. Behind her, she heard him finally speak. Maya, wait, I can explain. She didn't stop. She didn't turn around. She just kept walking into the kitchen, where her daughter's drawing still hung on the refrigerator under a magnetic butterfly. She would have to tell Chloe something. She would have to figure out the rest of her life. She would have to untangle 12 years of marriage and a house and a bum and a future that had just been erased. But right now,